groups involved in the violence at the Capitol building. And deputy district attorneys are suing the Los Angeles County DA. They say he's ordering them to break California strikes law. On behalf of the entire White House, the Secretary called for yesterday's chaotic break-in at the Capitol reprehensible. She also said that people in the White House are working towards an orderly transition of power.
I stood here at this podium the day after a historic church burned amid violent riots, and I said this: the First Amendment guarantees the right of the people to peaceably assemble. What we saw last night in Washington and across the country was not that, end quote. Make no mistake, what we saw yesterday afternoon in the halls of our Capitol likewise was not that.
Kayleigh McEnany said they grieve for those who were injured and died, and that it's time for people to come together. And Senator Lindsey Graham says yesterday's violence at the Capitol building has a connection to riots in Seattle and Portland. 4 protesters are now dead. Lindsey Graham says media outlets should take a look in the mirror before placing blame.
Graham said the first things first is to hold those accountable who are responsible for failing to protect the Capitol.
They should have been challenged. Warning shots should have been fired and lethal force should have been used once they penetrated. We dodged a major bullet yesterday. If this is not a wake-up call, I do not know what is.
Some have called on the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms Michael Stinger to resign, a move that Graham says he supports. At the same time, calling on a joint task force to be assembled so they can dedicate unrestricted resources to find out all parties responsible for destruction at the Capitol. While framing their questions for Graham, the media focused on blaming President Trump for the violence, asking Graham if he regrets his relationship with Trump.
I have absolutely no regrets of helping this president make us safer, more prosperous. I've enjoyed my relationship with him. The fault lies, I think, with some of the legal advice around it. You've had people in his legal team make claims that are just beyond the pale.
But he didn't attribute the violence solely to the
by immediately invoking the 25th Amendment.
If the Vice President invokes the amendment, a majority of the cabinet has to agree in order to unseat the president. Pelosi says that in case President Trump's cabinet members refuse to act, Congress may try to impeach the president again.
If the Vice President is
responsible for inciting an attempted coup against the people. She adds she will hold accountable Republican Congress members who, according to her, promoted conspiracy theories that provoked the violence.
Joe Biden has nominated Merrick Garland as his pick for Attorney General. Garland currently serves as a circuit court judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit.
Please sit down, thank you.
Biden's team described 68-year-old Garland as a Department of Justice veteran and an independent jurist.
For Attorney General of the United States, I nominate a man of impeccable integrity, Judge Merrick Garland, one of the most respected jurists of our time, brilliant yet humble, distinguished yet modest, full of character and
Garland described the principles he would be devoted to as Attorney General.
They echo today in the priorities that lie before us, from ensuring racial equity in our justice system to meeting the evolving threat of violent extremism.
Biden also announced Lisa Monaco as nominee for Deputy Attorney General. Monaco is a prosecutor who worked in the DOJ for 15 years, partly under the Obama administration. She once served as chief of staff for Robert Mueller when he was the director of the FBI.
Today, we are at another inflection point. Some of the challenges we face are familiar: racial inequality, the need for criminal justice reform, domestic terrorism, and threats to public safety. Some of the tasks are enduring, like the importance of working closely with law enforcement to ensure public safety and to build trust in our communities.
Biden also nominated Vanita Gupta as nominee for Associate Attorney General and Kristen Clark as nominee for Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
The Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, has resigned from her position in President Trump's administration. Chao cited the storming of the Capitol by protesters as her reason. Chao said the breach of the Capitol was, quote, a traumatic and entirely avoidable event. She sought to connect the breach to how President Trump spoke to a rally shortly before it occurred. She said the incident has deeply troubled her in a way she simply cannot set aside. She said her resignation 11th, and until then, she will help Joe Biden's nominee, Peter Buttigieg, prepare to head the department. Given the rampant allegations of election fraud, there were many potential scenarios of how January 6th joint session of Congress could have played out. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to a constitutional expert about his reaction to what happened.
Some said Pence had the authority to approve or throw out electors in states with wide allegations of fraud, while others claimed he only had a ceremonial role. We spoke to Constitution expert, attorney, and former Texas Representative Rick Green for his comments on the event.
Precedent. So the merits of the case have never been heard. The constitutionality of the statute actually has never been defended. I'm not aware of any court that has passed on its constitutionality. Actually, I'm not aware of anybody who's defended the constitutionality. And I hope that this body will not miss the opportunity to take affirmative action to address the concerns of so many millions of Americans. To say to millions of Americans tonight that violence is never warranted, that violence will not be tolerated, that those who engage in it will be prosecuted, but that this body will act to address the concerns of all Americans across the country. We do need an investigation into irregularities, fraud. We do need a way forward together. We need election security reforms.
The youngest member of Congress, 25-year-old Madison Cawthorn, challenged Pennsylvania's electoral votes.
And what unites each and every generation of Americans is the idea that those who submit themselves to the authority of government ought to have a voice in that same government. And being an American means that sometimes you must stand alone while others sit. Now, obviously I can't stand, but trust me, if I could stand, I would stand in defense of our Constitution today. Amen. Thank you all.
Penny Zhou, NTD News.
President Trump has been indefinitely banned on Facebook and Instagram. He was also temporarily banned from Twitter for posts he made about the protests on the Capitol. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to a social media professor about this trend.
Tech giants have been doing more to censor content on their platforms in recent months, which is raising concern.
And you can't live in a country, a culture, a society where people have two different views on what is and what is not the truth.
President Trump is banned from Facebook at least until the peaceful transition of power. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg claims the president uses their platform to incite violent insurrection against a democratically elected government. This is after protesters and rioters stormed the Capitol during the joint session of Congress on January 6th. Now, outspoken lawyer Lynn Wood has been permanently removed from Twitter. And Mike Hahn, director of social media for Team Trump, says his personal Facebook account was locked for merely having access to Trump pages. We spoke to Andrew Selepak, a social media professor at the University of Florida, who also has a PhD in mass communications, on this censorship.
I think it sets up a pretty slippery slope where we know that tech companies can basically decide who gets to speak and who doesn't get to speak when we're talking about potentially the most powerful person on earth. This maybe limits other political leaders. It maybe limit political leaders around the world, individuals.
Selepak says this censorship will increase division. Conservatives will leave to consume conservative media and social media, while liberals will only subscribe to liberal media and social media platforms.
Because we'll continue to live in a world where half the country is sort of in an echo chamber of their own facts, and now we're getting an echo chamber of our own social media. And that's going to be a very concerning situation for all of us.
Selepak said that many members in a Biden administration will have relationships and associations with these tech companies. He says a Democrat-controlled House and Senate won't take steps to limit Section 230, which grants companies liability from user content. He says people need to be more media literate to look at sources to verify the facts, and also venture out to consume content from both sides of the aisle. Christina Kim, NTD News.
And Georgia's GOP chairman and Trump's legal team have dismissed their election fraud lawsuits against Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. That's according to an email from the Secretary of State. Trump's legal team dropped County, along with 3 other suits filed against Raffensperger. The Secretary of State claims the decision came after he wrote to Congress and refuted what he calls false claims of election fraud. Our reporters were also in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Here's what our cameraman saw outside the Capitol building. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
Around 4 p.m. on Wednesday, an NTD staff member arrived at the Capitol building. Here's what he saw.
When we arrived there, we could see that people were outside on the stairs in front of the building shouting and demanding that the Congress, they called them traitors, and they were very angry and upset about it, but peaceful.
Trey went there after learning that protesters breached the Capitol building early that afternoon. By the time he got there, protesters were and police occasionally threw tear gas to stop people from getting in.
But outside, people were just gathering, peaceful, standing, watching what was unfolding.
But half an hour later, police started clearing the crowd without warning.
What I would have expected is that the police is giving an announcement: we are clearing the area, please leave the area peacefully, otherwise we will do this and this and that. They didn't do that.
Instead, the police were marching towards the crowd, hitting their shields with batons, and at one point started pushing away protesters.
They pushed forward, waited a second, pushed forward, and waited a second. And just exactly this pushing forward creates a lot of stress, because suddenly the people have to leave, and they don't want to leave because they are protesting there. And they have nowhere to run away because there are other people behind them.
And there was another problem.
It was a limited area. It was like the balcony, the stairs, and the whole area. It was limited, so the people couldn't even leave quickly, as quickly as they were advancing. So they had no choice.
Among the chaos, a protester was injured.
And he was lying on the ground. So then the police stopped a little bit. The protesters were around this person trying to help him because he was bleeding all over the place, and I filmed that as well. And they stopped there for a moment because he was really hurt, badly hurt.
And other protesters were helping those who were sprayed by tear gas.
Good, brother. All right, you're good. Let it sit for a few minutes and you'll be all right. All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I love you, man. I love you. I love all of you. Let's keep going.
Police cleared away the crowd at around 5 p.m. and protesters started leaving the area. Juliet Song, NTD News.
There's been much controversy over who forcefully entered the Capitol building during Wednesday's protests. They've been labeled solely as Trump supporters by most media, but video footage appears to show a different picture. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Trump supporters have largely been blamed for the violence against police officers and property, but video footage appears to show a different story. This video taken by NTD's on-the-ground reporters shows Trump supporters trying to stop the people smashing windows of the Capitol building and calling them Antifa. You can hear them saying, "Anyone who does this is not with us." It appears other protesters grab his leg and pull him down to stop him from breaking the window. Other videos show pro-Trump protesters booing those breaking in and calling them Antifa. This video appears to show them trying to stop the people smashing windows and shoving them towards the police. We do know that many genuine Trump supporters did make it inside the barricades of the Capitol building. A number of them say they didn't use violence to get in, but were let in. In this video, police appear to open the barricades. Zach Voorhees, a former Google employee turned whistleblower, recorded a video of a Trump supporter who left the rally after things turned violent. He claims he overheard a plot to make Trump supporters look bad.
They were dressed as Trump supporters, but I could tell by their conversation that they were looking to do, and I heard them say, we got to shake this up so that these people look bad. And I saw them break a window on the Capitol.
Wednesday night, Congressman Mo Brooks urged people to not rush judgment on who assaulted the Capitol building. Brooks said on Twitter that another congressman told him that intelligence suggested Antifa was going to try to infiltrate the rally by dressing like Trump supporters. One protester who was at the forefront inside the Capitol and witnessed a woman getting shot has been identified as John Sullivan. He told 2KUTV News that he didn't support President Trump, but attended the protest to document it. Sullivan is a Black Lives Matter activist and the founder of Insurgents USA. On January 1st, he urged comrades to show up to the January 6th march. He wrote on Twitter, "We need numbers to show up. No fascist in DC. March against fascism. Spread the word, comrades. Hashtag F Trump, hashtag Antifa." He was also arrested in July for allegedly rioting and making threats of violence. In video captured by BG on the scene, he can be heard saying to other BLM activists that they need to rip Trump out of office and start a revolution.
We got rip Trump out of that office right over there. I want y'all to be after me. It's time for a revolution.
Much is still unknown about who exactly smashed the windows of the Capitol and what their intentions were. An investigation is underway. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
As tens of thousands of people gathered in D.C., people showed their support on the West Coast in Seattle. We talked to some of them about why they were there.
The attendees at the event tried to make their voices heard.
We've had problems with elections for a long time. And until this year, when I decided to get involved and understand the process from an actual participation perspective, I didn't realize how easy it is to fool the population.
She also added a few things she thinks the American people should learn to safeguard their freedoms.
As American citizens, we have a responsibility to hold accountable those individuals that we put into office. That means we've got to get out of our comfort zone. We've got to learn about things that we really would rather have somebody else take on for us, right? That's why we vote for people. Let them work out all the details, let them negotiate. But what happens is we've allowed that and become complacent to the point that our nation has become corrupt.
Another attendee is convinced that the election had its flaws.
I feel like we're in occupied territory because our votes don't matter. I'm on the ground all the time. I see people, and I don't believe that Washington State is as liberal as they try to make it sound to be.
He said that China poses the biggest threat to nations the world over.
People need to understand that this is an act of war on us. The Chinese Communist regime has been committing acts of war, not just in America, but all over the country. When you look at what they just did to Hong Kong, they used COVID as an example to get rid of concentration camps. And so this is a really big deal in my opinion. I think China is the biggest threat to not just the United States of America, but to this whole world.
He added that the U.S. has been infiltrated for a long time, and he hopes people realize that.
A union of deputy district attorneys is suing the Los Angeles County DA. They say he's ordering them to break California's law by banning them in some cases from seeking heavier sentences. NTD's Miguel Morano has more on that story.
This individual has been charged with 13.
Is often called the godfather of progressive prosecutors. He has ordered deputy district attorneys to soften up their crime fighting, all of which he says is to shrink the prison population. Now, an about 800-member union is suing him for allegedly ordering them to break California's 3 strikes law. The vice president of that union, Eric Sedal, told NBC LA that they swore an oath, but not an oath to Gascon.
We swear an oath to follow the state constitution and to uphold the laws of California and the United States, not to follow the directives of one individual.
Under the 3 strikes law, repeats, but Gascon's orders turned deputy DAs away from that law by banning them from seeking a harsher sentence in some cases. Zach Smith of the Heritage Foundation's Mies Center says Gascon is part of a movement of what he called rogue DAs, a number of which, including Gascon, are funded by left-wing billionaire George Soros.
The goal for electing these rogue
prosecutors, George Gascon and the others, is to kind of circumvent and short-circuit the process for enacting George Soros's and these other individuals' preferred policy goals. And what's happened in these jurisdictions where rogue prosecutors have been elected is that they're refusing to enforce duly enacted laws that they just disagree with.
Soros donated over $2 million to Gascon's campaign. This also happened in Philadelphia, where George Soros reportedly donated at least $1.4 million to now DA Larry Krasner's campaign in 2017. Krasner has ordered deputy DAs to release suspects without cash bail in cases of robbery, drunken driving, trespassing, and others.
And we're talking about things like the elimination of most types of bail, the decriminalization of most types of drug possession, and really policies that I would consider to be misguided and dangerous.
We reached out to Soros's Open Society Foundations for comment, but they didn't get back to us before airtime. DA Gascon and the Deputy District Attorneys Union are scheduled for court in early February. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too big to fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of The Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
And welcome back. Earlier today, American thought leaders host Yanya Kellick sat down with freshman Congresswoman Mary Miller. She's a farmer, mother of 7, and a grandmother from Illinois. She was, of course, there for yesterday's joint session of Congress and all the turmoil that followed. Here's her account of what happened.
So, Congresswoman Miller, terrible, terrible day yesterday, the 6th of January. Horrific scenes, at least one person shot and killed. What are your impressions? What happened? This is your second day in Congress.
Well, it was shocking. We were in the House, and we were told that the Capitol had been compromised. And then I believe we were hearing some kind of gunfire, all kinds of things. Several of the members got up and left. Then we were told, get your gas masks out, which I didn't even know we had them under our seats. And I was shaking, undid the gas mask, reading the directions. I mean, I've never had this experience before. Then they said, follow us. The police took us. I think I'm in pretty good shape, but I don't know if it's adrenaline or we actually were rushing to the point that I was tired and out of breath down the stairs, through all the corridors, and at one point we ended up in a room with windows next to a door with no policemen. And I was thinking how we were sitting ducks there. We weren't there just, maybe 5 minutes. And then the police came and said, come with us again, and rushed us all around and then took us to a secured room with no windows. And they did tell us, do not tell the media where you are. We weren't there very long. And there was an announcement that someone was doing an interview and disclosed our location, which was very disturbing. But I join my colleagues in denouncing this violence. And it's a very sad day in our nation, and I want to be part of bringing healing to our nation. And, it's just very sad, and I've been upset with the nation. I support our police, the Capitol Police. I'm sure all of them have been doing all that they can. And I'm sorry that this has happened. And
so, what are the implications in your mind, I suppose, for the nation, where it's being described as a storming of the Capitol? People broke into the Capitol building. Well,
first of all, I think that we shouldn't rush to conclusions. So one side saying it's Trump, the other side saying it's Antifa. And personally, I'm going to be slow in making a statement about that. I'm sure that it's under investigation, and, I wouldn't be surprised if it was both. I don't know. I do think that our nation is more polarized than ever, and I hate it. I hate the angry rhetoric, and, I think that the leaders should try to pull our nation together and not, I know last night in the Capitol there was, when the House members met, and there was, the Democrats were accusing us of treason, of sedition, insurrection, we caused it. And, that's really unhelpful, and it's a lie, it's untrue. And I think that we should stop that kind of talk and work together for the good of our nation.
And now we're joined by the host of NTD Business, Paul Greeny. Paul was in D.C. yesterday and witnessed everything that happened on the outside of the Capitol. He's here to tell us what he saw. Paul, I know the day started out very differently from how it ended up. Why don't you take us to the beginning of the day and describe where you were, what the atmosphere was like, the people you were speaking to. Can you take us back to that?
Yeah, sure. What a day. What a really, really incredible day, Been a few field reporting, some incredible experiences. This one at the U.S. Capitol in D.C. on such an important day was really, really, won't be one I'll forget. We started very early in the day, like a lot of the Trump supporters and the different people active in the event, whether they were in the U.S. Capitol or coming to the rally or whoever you were, reporters. Everyone started early. We arrived at the Washington Monument probably around 7 a.m. They had all the roads closed off. Took us quite a while to get there. Had to walk part of it as well. Even when we arrived, we thought we were early, but there were already, I would say, thousands of Trump supporters, people with speakers, people with, selling Trump t-shirts, Trump bags, etc., already arrived. So we got speaking with people. Some people had traveled 8 hours, 9 hours from Arizona, from Colorado, Washington State, California. We met people from really everywhere. I asked a lot of them, why did you come? Why go to such great lengths? Different people had different answers. Some of them said that they felt that Trump had supported them a lot over the past 4 years, and they wanted to now support Trump when he called on people, when he called on people to come there on January 6th. Some of them said that they wanted to safeguard the Constitution. They felt that the Constitution was a threat, that the elections weren't fair, that perhaps people were trying to undermine the Constitution, the rule of law and democracy, and they wanted to come here not to achieve anything underhanded, they told me, just to make sure that every legal vote was counted and every fraudulent vote was tossed out, a lot like the president had said. We met a lot of people as well. Of course, it was just after the announcement that the two Democratic candidates for Senate in Georgia, they'll win the race in Georgia. A lot of the people were afraid of the socialist policies that could potentially be enacted under a very strong Democratic control. A lot of them were really, as you can imagine, a lot of the Trump supporters are from conservative areas, a lot of them from middle America, really salt of the earth, ordinary people, but quite worried what might happen and how America might look, not just for themselves, but for their kids or for their grandkids. And so a lot of them just showed up on the day, tried to do what little they could, as they told me, to try and ensure integrity of the elections and things. So that was really from early on in the morning. Yeah, this from at least 7 a.m. or even before that.
What was the overall atmosphere like? I suppose particularly when Trump was speaking and the energy in the crowd. It sounds like, some people were a bit dejected and frustrated. Did you have any sense that there was a feeling of violence in the air? Or what was the overall atmosphere?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Anybody I spoke with, these people really revere Trump. They really, really are thankful for him. That was the reason they traveled so far, a lot of them. They're really thankful for fighting for them. They consider themselves lost voices, and kind of the forgotten folk. And they really feel that Trump, over the past 4 years, has supported them, like I mentioned. And Trump was very clear, and these people noted it. He was very clear before the protest that he wanted people to protest peacefully. And I really feel that these people who went there, who were true Trump supporters, who actually wanted to go and support the president, there was no way they were going to undermine him or go beyond it. And when I saw, hard to get an estimate, but there was no feeling of, it was very cold all morning, there was no feeling of impatience, there was nobody, no fights or no disputes. The people were very calm. They were just ready to listen, ready to hear the speeches and things like this. And even I asked a lot of them, is this an assault on democracy? Like a lot of people are saying, do you consider this assault on democracy? And they say, a lot of the people, they told me, we're not trying to assault democracy here. We're trying to safeguard democracy and safeguard the Constitution and safeguard the rules of the game and make sure that they were implemented fairly. A lot of them didn't. But no real indication or no feeling, nobody there calling for revolution or violent revolution or insurrection or a lot of these words that we've been hearing. Nobody that I spoke with, and we spoke with a lot of people in the morning, the atmosphere was quite jovial, was quite positive. You had Rudy Giuliani, Brian Eastman, the constitutional scholar, and Trump. All of their speeches were quite positive. These guys are quite lighthearted kind of guys, nothing too serious. And so I really, when we started to hear about what was happening in the Capitol, it was really a shock. It was really a shock.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to hear more from you. We're going to just take a short break now, and then we'll be right back with more from Paul Greeny.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
So we're back with the host of NTD Business, Paul Greeny, who was in D.C. all day yesterday. Paul, so earlier before the break, we were talking about, the peaceful atmosphere that was in front at the big rally where President Trump and others were speaking. Later in the afternoon, that's when things, or earlier, I guess about midday or around 2 o'clock, that's where things started to get a little bit dicey at the Capitol. There was, I think we've got tape of, can we roll the footage of a lot of people by this point? We're in the Capitol building. We got that footage. I think we'll get it up in just a second. You left the area for a little while. In the meantime, they had breached and gone into the Capitol. The mayor of D.C. declared a curfew from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m. this morning. And she also said that the police were ordered to clear the Capitol and create a perimeter and, basically clear the area of protesters. So I understand you came back, you came to the Capitol at around 4:30, I think you said. What was happening at that point? What did you see? And what did you, more importantly, what were you thinking? What did you feel? Because I know you've been in some, you were in Hong Kong and some pretty intense protests over there too, so you've got some perspective on it. So tell us what you saw and thought.
Yeah, so just after the president's speech, we had to rendezvous back at our headquarters in DC, the company headquarters, and it was actually there that I saw the footage. We had heard a little bit of rumblings about. When we got back to the head office, we saw the imagery of the people inside the Capitol, of these different scenes that we've all seen over the past couple of days, and really everybody in the office, I think, was really, really surreal. Really, really. I don't think anybody there, like you mentioned, we've covered Hong Kong, I was there, but this was the U.S. Capitol. You grow up with it. It's like the capital of the entire nation, and to see this happening, it was really, really shocking. And so from there, we made our way. We started to make our way to the Capitol quite fast. The team actually went ahead of me. I had some things to do at the office. They went straight to the Capitol. And it was just at this time that we got word that, as you mentioned, introduced this curfew. And so as I was walking to the Capitol, there was very few people walking in the same direction as I was. This was about, I feel, About 4:30, just before 4:30, maybe 4 p.m., 4:15.
So just to say, this footage that we're looking at now is probably about an hour before the time that you're describing, where it's still, full crowds in front of the Capitol, on the building. Just to give some context here, go ahead.
That would make sense. Yeah, thank you for that. So this is what we see probably, as you mentioned, about an hour before I arrived. As I was arriving, I would imagine that a lot of these people had started to leave the area, I assume, because I saw a lot of people with kids, families, people of all ages actually leaving the area, and very few people walking the direction I was. Whenever I arrived, there was really, I would say, a fraction of the people. There were, as we saw just now, people all, you can see the staircases there, people all lined up the entire way up the Capitol. Those people were still there whenever I arrived, but a lot less people than we see here at the moment. And
Paul, let me ask you something. I just want to back up a little bit, because I know we were having connectivity problems all day yesterday. Everyone using their cell phone stuff. Do you think, were people in the crowd aware of other happenings? For example, that Vice President Pence had decided not to send the electors back to the legislatures, that there was violence at the Capitol. Was word of these things getting out?
No, not with the people that I spoke with. I remember on the way to the Capitol asking people, have you heard what that Vice President Mike Pence won't challenge the Electoral College votes? People said, no, we didn't hear. A lot of them weren't too happy to hear it, as you can imagine, the Trump supporters. But even asking them about the president had sent out a message. We know that Twitter, I believe, took it down. People didn't really know this.
At that point, I believe for quite a while the message was up, but you couldn't share it or you couldn't retweet it, you couldn't comment on it, but it was just there on his Twitter feed. So people didn't have any ability to share it with each other. They would have had to have told people to go look at it if they were able.
I believe so. That was the people I spoke with. When I arrived, the atmosphere was still quite tense. Maybe the people, as I mentioned, who had left the Capitol area, maybe they had heard this message from the president, maybe they had passed it between themselves. As I mentioned, they really revere President Trump, and I would assume that they would go home since he asked them to go home. But the people who were there, I like to overhear, listen in on people's conversations as a reporter while I'm there, to kind of get a feel for the atmosphere and how people are feeling about it. I didn't really hear much. Not much talk about the curfew that was put in place, and really time was ticking down. 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:15, we were getting there, but really very little talk. But the atmosphere was quite tense. The atmosphere was quite tense. The protesters had really covered, as we saw, many levels of the entrance to the Capitol building, and the police were really only on the roof. Really only on the roof, but you could feel that something was brewing, something was going to happen. So no, there wasn't really this type of conversation, not that I heard. And when I asked people specific questions, do they know what's happening, they didn't really know, most of the people.
Interesting. Okay, so what happened next? How did things go from your perspective on the outside?
Yeah, so I think things escalated quite quick. I say escalated. I would say things moved along quite quickly. Once the police decided, I assume they got some orders to clear the Capitol area. I believe we spoke offline. You mentioned that the protesters had been warned that they needed to secure the Capitol building. Of course, we realized all the lawmakers were still inside. And so they were told, we need to secure the area. And so very quickly we started to see they're like flashbangs, or not so bright as flashbangs, like smoke grenades, tear gas, and they really focused. It's a very good shot. So they cleared the protesters from the top level to begin with, and then the protesters started to move downwards towards the lower levels. Now, I was quite worried seeing the protesters moving from the top levels, because there's lots of space up there, but once you start to move down the small staircases, a lot of people, tear gas can really it can annoy people. You can see that people started to move. If you look up very high, the people who started on your top left-hand side of your screen, the people had to move down these narrow staircases, and sometimes you could become a bit disorientated with the tear gas. I've tasted it myself too many times, and people were even considering, jumping off the small distance. I didn't see anyone fall. I was quite worried. So what the police would do was they would clear one level of the Capitol building, and then the protesters, they would really stay on the next one. The majority of them, we can see, they don't really leave this second level we can see. But then over time, the police might give them a break, maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and then fire another round of tear gas, and then the people would come down another level, and then slowly they were pushing the people back. But what I would say is, as you mentioned at the beginning of the call, I was in Hong Kong last year,